Welcome to this presentation on assessment and student conduct. My name is Doug Eck, and this is for completion of LDRD 652 at City University. Before we begin, I want to share with you my role is an assistant dean of students at the University of Houston. I have primary responsibilities in adjudicating student conduct and leading our various assessment initiatives within our office. So through this presentation, you should be able to understand the student conduct process at the University of Houston specifically. Similarly, you should be able to discover ways in which assessment can be implemented in the conduct process. And last but not least, learn how assessment results have changed and influenced our conduct process. So some background information. The University of Houston is located in Houston's historic Third Ward district. It's a very urban environment within the metropolitan city of Houston. We enroll over 42,000 students in nearly 150 different disciplines. Within the University of Houston, there is the Division of Student Affairs and Enrollment Services. This division oversees the programmatic aspects of 28 different offices and departments related to the enrollment and co-curricular experience. So if you think about everything outside of the classroom and athletics, chances are it falls under the Division of Student Affairs and Enrollment Services. The Dean of Students office then makes up one of those 28 departments. We're charged with administering the Student Code of Conduct and adjudicating any alleged violations of student behavior. The University of Houston's Dean of Students office has been using the discipline process that really hasn't changed over many years. Inherent in that process was a lack of understanding the impact or the outcomes or really the effectiveness of that process. A seemingly cross our fingers and hope it does what we want it to do has been the mentality and the approach, or really the rule of thumb. So when we're looking at working with nearly 1,500 students in the conduct process, it's really important that we ensure that our practice is meeting the defined objectives and the needs of the university. So as fiscal support becomes increasingly scarce from state and federal agencies, it's incumbent upon institutions to demonstrate the impact of their work on student learning, student success, and of course preparation for improving society. It's thus incumbent upon each department not only to prove how they are contributing to student success, but how they are contributing to the institution's mission as well. So for those of you that may not be familiar with the typical disciplinary process, generally things get started when a student does something that they probably should not be doing. This could be violating a policy, causing a commotion, just creating mischief. Generally, this behavior is then brought to our attention through the completion of an incident report. These reports outline the details of who was doing what, when, where, and then it's my job to figure out the why. From there, the students are invited, and I use the word invited around quotes, to set up a time to talk about the incident, sharing their perspectives, their side of the story, and of course any details that they are able to recall. This generally takes place during the hearing process. That can be either a formal or informal process depending on the student's preference. So from there, a decision is made as to whether it is believed that a student did what they were accused of doing. Students who are found to be not in violation have their case dismissed, whereas students who are found to have violated university policies are given a sanction. So looking at our process, I wanted to look at things that my office had control over. Specifically, the process aspects between our office and our students. These would include the notice, hearing, and outcome phases of the disciplinary process. So previous to my work and me starting at the University of Houston, assessment was always reported in terms of utilization and frequency. Without context, the focus is kind of on the increase in these numbers. You see here from fiscal year 15 to fiscal year 16, almost 200 more students, about 150 more students came through the disciplinary process. And so without the background detail or other data to suggest why there is an increase, this can become very alarming. So to launch an effective and purposeful assessment process, I developed a timeline. So paramount to launching this assessment project was to establish our outcomes. Much like the beginning of this presentation, it was a hope that as a result of participating in the conduct process, students would be able to do something. So from there, then, we developed a plan that looked at the different tools, the deadlines, the methods, and what reporting mechanisms would be necessary to conduct each assessment. We collected our data through pre and post tests, rubrics, surveys, and a host of other measures in which we were able to look at students' engagement through our process. Once we had the data, we were able to begin the process of understanding whether or not students were doing the type of things that we were hoping or expecting them to do. And then really it's important to remember that data that you collect after it's utilized, you use that to establish new outcomes. You use that to affect the process through the next cycle, something that I will show you here in a second. So for student conduct, these are 3 established learning outcomes for students who are going through the conduct process. First, we want students to be able to increase their knowledge, whether it be about the process, the rules, the policies, the impact of their actions and behaviors. Those are things that we want them to show demonstrated growth in. Secondly, we want them to be able to reflect back and show the impact of their behavior on their awareness and their willingness, maybe their motivation to change and do things better in the future. And then finally, we want students to understand the process in and of itself, from the notice to the hearing process to the resolution and outcome process. We want them to be able to articulate that back to us, but also to be able to share that with their peers should they be referred through the process as well. So again, we focused on the aspects of the discipline process that we had immediate control over: the notice, the hearing, and the outcome phases. These served as the primary points for data collection in our various assessment activities. So when students came to the office, they completed a pre-hearing survey. This assessment gathered their understanding and thoughts about what they think they knew. Following the hearing, students completed a post-hearing survey to gather information related to what they had just experienced. These questions mirrored the same questions that they completed when they arrived to our office. This provided an opportunity to do a comparative analysis to see where students were growing in their learning and what aspects of the disciplinary process remained most effective and least effective. So here are some results of the data that we collected relative to a student's understanding of the disciplinary process and why they were referred to the Dean of Students office. You will see here that the green bars represent information from the pre-hearing or that pre-meeting data, and the red bars reflect the post-hearing or the post-meeting data. In each of these categories, you'll notice a significant increase in student understanding as a result of participating in the hearing process. Similarly, here we look at a student's perceived level of impact of their actions on other UH students and the institution's reputation. Again, the green bar is marking pre-meeting responses and the red bar is reflecting post-meeting responses. We continue to see solid gains in student understanding of their actions. So overall, when we look at the various assessments related to the notice, the hearing, and the outcome processes, we find that there was growth in each of these areas as a result of students participating in the process. However, you will notice that the least amount of growth and overall ability has to do with the outcome phase of the discipline process. Specifically, understanding impact of actions on the student themselves, on the student's peers, and of course the institution, as well as reflecting how those actions might impact their life after graduation. This caused us to ask more questions. So as it relates to the outcome aspects of the disciplinary process, we were able to summarize our findings in a way that suggested students were not adequately reflecting on their behavior nor their experience. So we began to look at the reflection component related to sanctioning and the student understanding of what they were experiencing and planning to do. So we began to apply a rubric for all reflection sanctions that were completed, having the hearing officer evaluate the student's reflective work. Our original reflection prompt was this. This language was given to any student that was assigned to complete a reflection based upon their disciplinary experience. You will see that this language is directing the student to focus on a couple of core areas related to their experience, but speaks very generally in terms of what they need to do and what we expect them to accomplish. So deploying this rubric to 13 hearing officers at the university, every time they completed a reflection, the results started to trickle in over the course of a semester. So after a semester of collecting rubric evaluations related to student reflections, we discovered on average students were scoring about a 52.7%, which of course is an F in academic terms. With this data in hand, we needed to change something in hopes of improving student learning. So here you will see the prompt that we revised and expanded and really made more specific. So recognizing that student development theory is necessary for comprehension, rationalization, and moral development, we attempted to tie in specific aspects of a student's experience to higher order, higher level thinking. Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral development provided a really strong basis and approach for helping us revamp our reflection approach. Here you see more specificity, more direction provided to the student as it relates to reflecting on the core competencies and the core aspects of the disciplinary process and their behavior. So following the implementation of this revamped rubric, this revamped prompt, the new guidelines for utilizing the student sanctioning of reflection, we continued to use the same rubric and collected data for one more semester, and of course found a significant increase of average scores, climbing from 52.7% to 92.3%. Victory in our eyes. So in addition to looking at the notice and hearing outcome processes of the disciplinary cycle, we also started to look at tying local data we were collecting to bigger institutional data, namely persistence rates. We were pleasantly surprised to see that students who completed the conduct process were persisting at a higher rate than the average UH student. Our students persisting at about 83%, whereas the average for the institution students is less than 80%. We also surveyed our hearing board members who serve as a formal adjudication. They serve in a formal adjudication role, assessing their understanding of their role and responsibilities pre and post training. So these individuals work in a formal capacity to adjudicate student behavior should a student select to appear before them. Here you will notice that we move from having a third of our hearing board members not possessing an understanding of their role responsibilities to 100% possessing that awareness after completing training. So we've had a great deal of success in looking at our process to see what is going well and of course what areas we need to improve. As assessment should be an ongoing process, we continue to expand our focus to see what aspects of the disciplinary process we need to look at next. Beyond reflective sanctions, we will begin to look at whether other sanctions are serving their designated purpose as an educational intervention, or are they simply serving as a deterrent for students to not do something similar in the future. We will begin to look at more student demographic data to determine if there are more or any notable patterns or correlations between those that have conduct issues and those that do not. And of course, we think it's important to look at graduation rates of students who go through the disciplinary process. While we've demonstrated an impact on persistence, it's important that we know the impact on graduation as well. So for additional information on student conduct from a national perspective, an institutional perspective, and of course resources related to our assessment tools, I'd invite you to look at Campus Labs. They have a suite of software dedicated to transforming higher education through data. Their program baseline provided a lot of resource and tools for us to collect the data that we did. Additionally, the Association for Student Conduct Administration serves as our global organization for student conduct professionals in higher education. And then, of course, the Dean of Students website at the University of Houston hosts a great deal of information and data related to the conduct process. So just a quick review. Hopefully you now have a greater understanding of the conduct process as it exists at the University of Houston. You know some ways in which assessment can be incorporated in the conduct process. And of course, how through data collection you can actually change processes and use that data to influence your overall objectives and outcomes. So I thank you for watching. I welcome any questions that you might have and invite you to enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.